everyone, I'm Tarini Sood and you're watching another episode of The Making Of. Our guest for today is a self-taught chef who started her cooking journey just at the age of 16. She even gave up a 4-year finance career to start her own catering business. From working in the kitchens of Michelin-starred restaurants and training under street food vendors to being the CEO of Mask Mumbai today, she's someone who really understands flavors. We welcome Chef Aditi Duggar with us. Hi Aditi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi.
Aditi, now we just to start off, why don't you tell us about how you decided to become a chef? Is this something that you always knew that you wanted to do?
No, not actually. I was pursuing finance, and I think post my first pregnancy, I decided to make a career switch. I was always very, very inspired by my grandmother and mother's kitchen. I think food for me was what I saw growing up was, everything was very, very passionately cooked. We always ate seasonal. Coming from a Marwari home, everything was about flavor. And I think every meal that my grandmother or mother put out was always so robust in flavor that I always thought that if I became a chef, that's the kind of meals that I would feel very proud, making feel people happy eating those kind of meals that are really, really, flavor heavy. And I started out with a catering company with my mom in 2012. It was really a home run kitchen. We started doing small caterings, and we started catering to a very niche audience. But I think I was always very, very ambitious. So the idea quickly grew over time, and in 2014 I moved to an industrial kitchen, and in 2015 I met Pratik Sadhu and we started Mask. And after that there was no looking back, because the restaurant took over. The restaurant consumed everything that we imagined we wanted to do with Indian produce. And I think all of that also went hand in hand with what I did with the catering. So I grew both the brands simultaneously, and we're already on to doing bigger, better things, even in lockdown.
Yeah, so following up on that, I was just about to ask you, was your grandmom then your greatest inspiration? What was the one thing that you said that you learned from her that you incorporate in your cooking technique even today?
Of course, I think like my mom and grandmom are my greatest inspirations, because I think what I really learned from them is how meticulously they ran their kitchens, and with how much passion it was really cooking from the heart. And I think that's what I bring to the table as well for my diners.
Okay, so why don't you give us a little bit of a background on how you decided to come up with the concept for Mask?
So, actually, it all started with Sage and Saffron. That was my catering company that started in 2012. I started the catering company with my mother. It was a home run brand. We slowly grew over time. I think my passion for beautiful table setups and how meticulously I wanted the diner to experience the food, or like the passion about sourcing the ingredients, or bringing on different through my travels, bringing about different flavors and infusing that into my food. I think what I started really catering to is a very, very niche audience, and started building that audience for myself. And when I met Pratik Sadhu in 2015, I think we sort of shared a common vision of flavor, to use amazing produce. I think to be vocal for local. I mean, all those things, and to really put Indian produce on a global map, because India is known for agriculture, but nobody really gave lost ingredients or ingredients from our backyard that much importance. So I think our goal with Mask was really to make ingredients the hero, and we shared a common passion for excellence, and what we wanted to achieve with Mask. And that's how we decided to open this restaurant. It was a really bold decision, because at that time we were the only tasting menu restaurant in the country. So we
Yeah.
weren't doing a la cartes. We broke away from what people expected. So we were the outliers, but in 4 years, we quickly became an important restaurant that changed the landscape of the country.
Yeah. So, building on that, how would you say you decided on the flavors, the pairings for your menu? Did you have to experiment a lot?
Of course, there's a lot of research that goes into every menu at Mask. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks of research before we, or even longer. Sometimes we're working on ingredients even for months before it actually, takes play on our menu. Because also the idea when we started Mask was to also run, sort of create an ecosystem where we become a zero waste restaurant. So we were talking about sustainability, and like everybody's talking about these things, but how do you actually really apply it practically as a chef or as a restaurateur? So we were using things like making pea garum with, the waste of, using pea shells to make pea garum, or like we're using every ingredient of the line, or like we started doing experiments with koji, and like doing fermentations. And so I think what we were doing is that what we wanted to really focus with bringing about flavors is where we took a deep dive into where the ingredients came from, its traceability, what sort of flavors can we extract from every ingredient. So whether it's the skin or the seed or the whole flesh, like what sort of flavor extraction and what different cooking methods we can do to extract those flavors, whether it's dehydrating or fermenting or pickling. Or so that's the reason we actually, in March this year, though Mask was always doing it in its kitchen, we set up a whole standing space which is called Mask Lab, which does this sort of research on ingredients, where we've set up almost like a fermentation lab, where we are getting ingredients in its seasonal prime time, and then we get it in bulk, and then we process it in different ways, and we're extracting flavor in different ways, and we're using it in our menus.
This seems like it's quite a process, like what would you say your biggest obstacle would have been so far?
I think our biggest obstacle so far is really, like, I think for us it is expansion, because all our ideas are always catering to a very, very niche idea. So how do we take this idea and create a larger impact? I think that's our biggest obstacle. It's amazing that we are always able to cater to a discerning audience, but how do we sort of make our research and voice, or like a voice behind this cuisine of food, make it approachable to a larger audience? And I think that has been our biggest obstacle since we opened. I mean, even though, like, we have become a very, very important restaurant in the landscape of the restaurant scene in this country, but it's I think our approach to reach to a wider or larger audience is always been tough. And I think lockdown sort of changed that for us, because we used social media, or we reached out to an audience that didn't know Mask, and I think we started listening more to our audience for what they wanted. So right from doing tailgates on Sunday, like where our food became more approachable, like where we were doing all these concept dining through lockdown, whether it was making the best burger that people wanted to eat, but again doing it the Mask way. I think it really taught us how to sort of shift in our idea of what fine dining means to us, but at the same time don't steer from our core.
So, do you think social media is an important tool to like grow your business? If you had to give advice to like people who are just about starting out today, how would you tell them to go about using social media? Which is the most important social media platform to you today?
For us, I think we use Instagram and Twitter as our two very important mediums, and they serve two different purposes for us. But I think Instagram is a great medium for us. We use it, because I mean, even when you want to release something, whether it's a collaboration, or whether it's a new menu, or whether it's a new technique or concept, it's very difficult to do it all the time through regular media channels, because how many articles are you going to write about every new thing you develop? But I think social media gives us that ability to talk and have a conversation with our audience. It lets us debate with our audience, for sort of also to get feedback, on their experiences, or how they have sort of perceived our research, or like when they come in for a dining experience, how that translates for them, and is what the efforts that we're doing, is it really turning into not only a meal but also a ground for education for them?
Now, you must have heard about the Maggie India's Apna Food Business campaign that they're doing in collaboration with India Food Network. Now, you're actually offering these home chefs a platform on which they can showcase their talent. They're offering them a chance to start their own food business or to start their own food channel. What do you think about this campaign?
I think it's amazing because I think even when I started out, I think to get that push or that seed capital for any home chef is so important. And for a brand like Maggie to be able to offer that or to become a backbone for somebody where they feel like they can sort of go back, because I think just having seed capital isn't enough, right? You need somebody to mentor you through that process, because you might start out a business and then you have a lot of hindrances, or like you're met with challenges that you didn't expect. And I think when you have a brand that is so is so vastly accomplished in what they do, and you have that brand to sort of back you and to sort of go back to, with you almost become like a think tank for them, is a great support system. It's a super exciting opportunity for people who want to actually make their passion into real businesses.
Yeah, of course, I agree. So if there was one piece of advice that you'd want to give to young chefs, like young people who are just about starting out in their careers, what would that piece of advice be?
I think it's definitely, I think you have to make calculated risks, but I don't think one should fear taking those risks, because I mean, it's always smaller steps to reach, to see through a bigger vision. But I think for me, it's really doing things with complete passion, and like when you want to do something that you love, I think and actually see it becoming something is what gives one like the true joy of, like work or living, and everything comes together. So for me, of course, I think you have to take that plunge. And for me, I think it's a spontaneity of always taking a plunge. I go with my intuition, and that always works for me.
Aditi, before we wind up, I've got 5 quick questions for you. If you could just answer them in one word. The first word that comes to your head. Should we start?
Yes.
Okay, your one guilty pleasure.
White butter.
Okay, if you could eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Passion fruit. I eat passion fruit in everything.
How did you react to your first negative review?
I think with an open mind, for sure.
Okay. One ingredient that you think makes everything better.
Truffles.
Okay. And our last question for today. If you could use one word to describe the Indian food scenario, or where the Indian food is going in the future, what would you say that word would be?
Promising.
Thank you so much for your time, Aditi. It's been lovely having you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's all for today. Thank you all for watching, and tune in again next week for another episode.